So we are going to make some cheese today, and the first thing that you want to do is get a very large pot and make sure that you wash it really well. And after you wash it, you want to dry the inside of the pot really well. You don't want any water or any residue of any kind. So if you have a dishwasher, you're going to want to hand wash and really scrub the inside of the pot so that it's, you know, perfect. So you have a big pot, that's what we're gonna start with, something that holds 2 gallons of milk, even though we're just gonna use 1 gallon for this particular recipe. So your large pot, you also have to get a few things for this particular type of cheese that we're gonna make. So I'm gonna make feta cheese. It's a great summer cheese to make, especially because it goes really well in salads, and homemade feta is way more amazing than anything that you're gonna ever experience at the store. So you're gonna have to get either mesophilic culture, a direct set culture, or you can use yogurt, like Greek yogurt that has like a direct set consistency, but I recommend the actual culture. Also, you want to get some rennet tablets. This is vegetable rennet. I prefer vegetable rennet to animal rennet just because animal rennet is, I don't know, it just sounds kind of gross. Then with the milk that I'm going to use is just literally from the store. So this homogenized type of milk that you get from the store, you're going to need calcium chloride because it does not have the same properties that whole milk from just straight out of a cow or a goat are going to have. So you have to have calcium chloride to allow the particles in the homogenized and pasteurized milk to actually react with the culture and set. So the very first thing you're gonna do is pour either, whether you're making 1 or 2 gallons of the milk, you're just gonna pour that milk into your pot. So you're gonna just pour the entire, so obviously the milk has been kept cold, and the first step is to really just bring it up to a little bit above room temperature. You want it to be about 86 degrees, and ideally you will have a I don't know, some kind of a thermometer, but I only have a candy thermometer, and candy thermometers start at, you can see, it starts at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is no help at all because cultures are not going to be growing above 100 degrees. So you're going to have to bring that milk though because it's chilled, therefore it's not going to be room temperature, which right now today I think the thermostat says 78 degrees in the house because it's a hot day, and we only have 1 window AC unit for the entire house, so it's about 78 degrees in here. It's a perfect day for making something like the feta cheese. I am gonna go ahead and actually use the 2nd gallon. I was kind of debating because I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just do 1 gallon, but I think I'm gonna make 2 gallons because I'm sure that if I happen to have like extra cheese left over or too much, like there are gonna be plenty of friends willing to take that off of my hands. But really 2 gallons of milk doesn't make that much cheese. Like a gallon of milk will make a nice serving for, you know, a meal for a family. It'll make a nice little amount, but 2 gallons of milk, as you will see from this, it will make more feta or mozzarella or like a high moisture content cheese. It'll make more of that than it will make a harder pressed cheese. So the pressed cheeses are going to require lots of milk. Like you want an even larger container than this. You can see, so this has 2 gallons of milk in it, and there's still a nice amount of room at the top. And that's really what you want. So I'm just gonna kind of let it sit out at room temperature. I'm just gonna put it on the stove and just cover it and let it kind of sit there, and then we will turn it on low and warm it up. And if you do not have a thermometer, you just kind of have to use common sense. Like to get the air is 78 degrees, your body is about in the midnight, like maybe 95, 96 degrees.
Yeah, so FYI,
If
it's
you put a
98
drop of
degrees.
that
But anyway,
milk
it doesn't
on your
matter.
wrist, that's the best place to gauge, but it should feel like a little bit cool to the touch, but not cold. So if it feels cold, it's definitely not right. If it feels like you can barely feel the coolness, then it's probably right around the right temperature for the culture. Like it's definitely, you can tell it's warming. It's not refrigerator temperature, but it's still not hot. You don't want to overheat the milk. So we're gonna let it set out. Then I'll be back. I'm gonna let it set out for probably about 30 minutes. Then we're gonna start warming it up.
So this is some of the stuff that you're going to need, kind of what it looks like. I showed you a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to see the mesophilic cultures in this little pouch with the yellow. The calcium chloride is in that bottle, and then the vegetable rennet tablets are in that other packet. Just a side note, the animal rennet is made from like the inside of a calf's stomach, so that just kind of like, that's why I was saying it sounds a little gross to me, but you know, like everyone can use what you want to use. So, but this is the vegetable rennet, the calcium chloride, and the mesophilic culture that you will need for this cheese. This is the kind of milk that I'm using. It's obviously whole milk. You should always use whole milk for this. It works the best. It's also local-ish. I mean, it's from Washington State, I believe, Colville, Washington. So the nice thing about milk that is more real or local is you can kind of see the separation right here. Like that's a little piece of cream floating in there. That means that it actually has, you know, like if it's whole milk, it actually has fat in it, which is what you want for cheese. In addition to the large pot, the culture, the calcium chloride, the rennet tablet, you're also going to need a large wooden spoon with a long handle and a large knife with a handle that is like as tall, or with a blade that's as tall as your pot. And the spoon also has to be taller than your pot. So a long spoon, a long knife, a tall pot that holds at least 2 gallons of milk, the calcium chloride, the rennet, and your culture. And then you're good to go. You're gonna also need a little bit of non-iodized salt. And I mean, you can use iodized salt, it just gives it a little bit different taste. So kosher salt is the best. But the other thing is, we are about ready to turn on the stove. So I'm just gonna turn it on low. You can turn it on lower too. But while the milk is warming up, we are going to add the calcium chloride. And you just need a little bit of it. So what I usually do is take a kind of like a teacup, and you're just gonna put a little bit of water that's kind of just not super warm and not super cold either, kind of in between, kind of neutral temperature. Again, just kind of you're just gonna put your wrist out and run the water a little bit over your wrist. So about like 1/4 cup or so of water, and you're gonna want to put just a little bit of the calcium chloride in, about 1/8 teaspoon or so. Not, you know, again, not a ton. So just a little pour, and you're going to incorporate that in with the water. And then you want to stir that into the milk while it's warming up. So I'll show you that. Pour in the calcium chloride that is diluted in a 1/4 cup of water. That was just tap water, which is fine to use. And that's just going to make sure that this milk is going to accept the culture. So any kind of store-bought milk, if you don't actually personally get it from the farm, and you know it's like the milk that lasts a while in your fridge, that usually means it's homogenized, pasteurized, and all that stuff. So if you get it from the farm, it's not going to last a week like in the fridge. It's going to last like a couple days or a few days, but it's got to be used fresh because it has all of that natural enzymes and everything in it. So kind of like the difference between breast milk and formula almost is like real milk you get from the farm versus milk that you just buy at the store. So anyways, that might not be a good analogy, but you're gonna see I'm just actually combining this milk with that calcium chloride, and you always want to incorporate an upward stirring motion with cheese to stir things in, as opposed to just a circular motion, because it really helps move either the rennet or the culture, or in this case the calcium chloride, just through the entire pot of milk. So you're basically going to just every 5 minutes or so kind of stir the milk again with that upward motion while it's on low, or as high as a number 2 on an electric stove. And you're going to just wait for that. Keep testing it on your wrist. Wait for it to be about 86 degrees. So when your milk has reached the right temperature, and that means that it is 86 degrees and or kind of like a little bit cooler than body temperature, but definitely warmer than room temperature, you're going to turn off the stove and you're going to get your mesophilic direct set culture. You only need 1 pack, because 1 pack can set 2 gallons of store-bought milk, or up to 4 gallons actually of farm fresh milk. So you're going to take that packet and you're just going to sprinkle that culture in there, and it's just a tiny little bit of powder. You're then going to stir with an upward motion until that culture is completely combined with the milk. And as soon as it's combined with the milk, all we're going to do is just let it set for an entire hour before we do the next step. So you want to, since we're going to let it set for an hour, we're going to put a lid on it so that nothing can fall in there, like, you know, dust or whatever. And you're just going to literally make sure your stove is off and just let it, you know, set there. I'm actually going to move it off of that burner even so that it's not too warm on the bottom of the pan. And we're just going to ignore it for 1 hour. And as soon as that timer goes off, we'll do the next step. So after your milk and the culture have set for an hour, you're going to dissolve one of these little rennet tablets. And again, I like to use vegetable rennet. You can use animal rennet if you like. And basically you're just going to dissolve that tablet in a little bit of water, like 1/8 of a cup to 1/4 of a cup of water. And you just want to make sure that it dissolves all the way. If you're only using 1 gallon of milk, you probably only need like half of a tablet of rennet. But if you're using 2 gallons of milk, you know, you're going to need a whole tablet. And the rennet basically is going to work with the mesophilic culture and the calcium chloride. It's all going to work together to set the curd, to really set the milk. So you're going to make sure that it takes a little bit to dissolve. You can actually buy liquid rennet as well, but I prefer the tablet rennet personally. Probably just because I'm familiar with it. It's what I always used when I made cheese as a teenager, so that's kind of what I learned with, and so that's what I still use because I know it's going to work. So once your rennet is all the way dissolved, you're going to pour this into the milk. And I'll just kind of come over to the actual. You can see that it doesn't look any different after that culture has sat for an entire hour. It still looks just like milk. You know, cheese curds haven't happened yet. So we're going to get that dissolved rennet. Make sure that that's kind of swirled around. Always kind of put a little bit of milk into the cup or bowl. And then again, you're going to just fold this. It's kind of like a folding motion. You want to stir with an upward motion as opposed to just around and around to make sure that the rennet is all the way combined into the milk. And we are going to let this set not 1 hour, but actually overnight. So about 8 to 10 hours. We're gonna let this set before we cut the curd. And you wanna make sure that it sets, of course, at room temperature. So yeah, room temperature today, as I said, is kind of a warm day, which is good. Like, you don't want to set it at room temperature if your house is like 60 degrees. You want to set it at room temperature at about, 70 degrees or maybe a little bit higher. So today it's about 78, which is perfect for these kind of cultures to grow. So what's in the milk right now? We have the calcium chloride. Then after that was stirred in and the milk was warmed to about 86 degrees, we added the mesophilic culture. And after that sat for an hour, we added the dissolved tablet of vegetable rennet. And so cheese making requires a lot of patience. We're going to put a lid on this and we are going to come back in the morning. So again, it's not on any kind of heat setting. It's just sitting at room temperature overnight, and you don't want anybody to bump it or disturb it. So I put a little do not disturb sign on my pan just because I know my kids are always, I had Isaiah was home for the weekend too, and so Franklin and Isaiah are always scoping around for any kind of food that I've made. So any pots on the stove that have a lid on them are usually going to be, like checked out. So that's why I put a little sign on it. So it's just going to sit here and sleep overnight, and we'll be back in the morning. So it is the next morning, and you can take the lid off of your pot and check your curd, and you can see that the curd has set because that's no longer milk. And then we're just going to cut the curd, and how we do this is basically it's actually the same way that I cut a watermelon into squares, because it gets all the way to the bottom. You go at this angle in 1/2 inch increments all the way across. Then you're going to go into those same lines at this angle all the way across, and then you're going to do that parallel lines or perpendicular lines that way, and then the same thing, if that makes sense. So I'll try and show you. It's a little bit hard because I'm trying to cut it and hold the camera. So again, you're going to start by cutting towards the left at about a 45-degree angle, and you start just with a 1/2 inch from the side, and then just go in straight parallel lines all the way across to the other edge of the pan, keeping your knife at that angle as much as possible. You just don't want it to be straight up and down, or you literally won't get anything cut, any of the curd cut at the bottom of the pan. So then you switch it and go towards the right, and go inside those same lines as much as you can, and just angle the knife a little bit towards the right again, so that it's going to connect underneath with those other lines and create really long strips. Then you switch the knife and you're cutting it towards yourself, towards your body, at the same kind of an angle, and you're kind of, as the tip of the knife connects with the pot, you're going all the way through to the bottom of the curd each time. And then you're going to switch it around and cut away from you in those same lines all the way forward. So this is how you cut cheese curd for any kind of cheese that you make. So it's a little bit hard to see whether you have been successful in cutting the curd until you're able to actually get a long-handled spoon and stir the curd a little bit and see it separate from the whey. You want to make sure that the curd has kind of a clean break in it. And this is a soft cheese, so this is what the curd looks like for a soft cheese. You're going to then get your colander ready, because we're going to start draining the whey out of the curd. So put a colander in the sink and then line it with either some layers of cheesecloth or a tea towel, or in my case, a pillowcase. You want to make sure your pillowcase or whatever fabric it is very kind of porous. And then you're going to ladle the curds and whey into the pillowcase, and then put the pillowcase in a kind of a bowl and bring it over to your kitchen cupboards, is usually where I hang mine, or you can hang it over the sink if you have some way to do that. And then you're going to tie a knot at the top so that it hangs from your cupboard door handles. And I actually had enough curd to fill 2 more pillowcases, so I just went ahead and got 2 more pillowcases, and then I'm going to have 3 pillowcases total and 3 bowls, 1 bowl underneath each one. And you can see the whey draining under the bottom of each of these, and you're going to drain it for most of the day. So when your whey gets full like this, you're just going to dump that and just put it kind of back underneath to continue to drain. So make sure you watch all of your whey bowls, because they're going to get quite a bit of whey. You want to make sure that you keep them emptied out. And we're going to, again, be draining this for 4 hours. So after 4 hours, I take the curds out of each of the pillowcases and transfer them to one new piece of cloth. I also, have to taste the cheese. So this is the new cloth that I've transferred all 3 of those containers into, because they have shrunk down quite a bit. So I also don't like to have my entire cabinet or cupboard space occupied by bags of cheese curd. So by transferring it into just one, then I just have one area that's taking up space. So of course you're going to have to continue to wait this out a little bit longer. I'm going to wait until evening for it to continue to drain. And these are the 3. You want to make sure you rinse out your either cheesecloth or tea towels or pillowcases really well, because you don't want any of that kind of sour smell from the whey to affect your laundry. So these are the 3 pillowcases just squeezed out. So one little tip, this is a kind of a thin scarf actually that I'm using for the final process. I tied a knot at the top, and then I also tied another knot down below just to kind of hold that curd together since it's getting more solid. So now for kind of setting it overnight, still feels like it's got some moisture content I want to get out. So I'm making a just improvised cheese press. I don't have a cheese press, but I'm just going to kind of like improvise one with the same bowl underneath. Then I put an upside down kind of cereal bowl inside that larger bowl, then a little small plate on top of that, and then the cheese curd, then another small plate on top of that, and then in kind of a cake pan so that it will hold this 15-pound weight. So literally that is just one of Franklin's dumbbells. So just any kind of weight that you can get. It's just hard to find something that has 15 pounds on it that's any smaller than a dumbbell. So I then decide that I'm going to check my cheese. So after this has actually been on for just a couple of hours, I'm going to check the cheese and see if the moisture content looks good. So I go ahead and break a little bit of the cheese off, and I kind of feel like it's still more like a chevrette, like it's just not quite dry enough for feta. So I'm just going to kind of reshape it and put this time 2 weights. So I've got the same configuration, only on top, underneath of the 15-pound weight, I put a 20-pound dumbbell. So I've got a 20-pound dumbbell and then a 15-pound dumbbell on top. So that's 35 pounds of pressure on that cheese. And that is going to definitely give that another hour or so. And then I'll definitely press out the remaining water that you want, or the remaining whey, out of the cheese. So this is a lot more similar to the texture that I really want for that cheese. It's got the right amount of moisture content, and I'm just going to go ahead and form balls. So I'm going to have 6 balls of feta. I form it into balls because I'm going to brine it overnight and then taste it, and then probably keep it in the brine solution throughout the week. So it just tastes better after a whole week of brining. So what I do is I get a jar or a large shaker, put about a teaspoon of salt, non-iodized salt, in your hand, put it in there, and about 12 ounces of water or so, and then the juice of a whole lemon, and stir that up and combine it really well. And then you're going to put the balls of feta into that brine solution and just kind of drop them in there, and then cover it up with a Ziploc bag, and then put the lid on, and then I cut the little end off the Ziploc bag, or any kind of plastic that you want. Just make sure it's sealed really tightly. So these are my 2 jars that I have, one in an actual quart jar and then one in Franklin's big protein shaker. And I'm going to go ahead and put these in the fridge to set overnight. And then I'm also going to, taste it and then leave them in the fridge probably for about a week until they're completely cured, because that just gives a nice full flavor of the lemon juice, and that kind of brine solution gets it nice and salty. So this is the next day, and I am super excited because I'm going to make a nice salad for lunch. I've got just kind of like some organic baby greens, and then I sliced up a carrot and some little cashews and strawberries, and then of course the feta, and you can drizzle it with any kind of a dressing. I put a nice little garlic vinaigrette on here. So feta is a cheese that you just kind of crumble over top of something as opposed to slicing or shredding. So I've just kind of crumbled it over top of this salad. So after you make your salad, it is time to enjoy the fruits of all that cheese labor. I cannot wait. Mm. 'It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's got such a great, I don't know, flavor. It's like just lightly salted, lightly kind of lemon tart flavor. And I know this bite is going to be the best because it has a strawberry in it. Strawberry and feta are just so good together. It's so good. Wine and feta are also really good together. So you're going to want to eat a lot more salads in the summer. Summer is a great time for salads too. I don't really like eating salads in the winter. And by the way, I redid my weave. So yeah, my hair changed overnight, which is common for me. So this is just amazing, moist, creamy, just a great tang on the flavor, feta cheese. So I still do have, actually, I'm gonna take one more bite and then I'm gonna show you, I still have lots of that feta brining, because honestly it's gonna be best if you brine it for at least a week. So it's only brined overnight and it's still like super amazing, but it's just gonna get better. So I'm gonna leave the rest of it. I'm gonna finish this one feta ball that I took out of the brine, but I'm going to definitely leave the rest of it throughout the week and then taste it at the end of the week because it's gonna be even better. So you can see I took one out of this container and this is what's left. So I used about half of that feta ball for my salad. And excuse me while I continue to eat this. But let me know if you have any questions, any concerns or whatever. You can definitely make this cheese and it's so good with goat milk. However, I don't have a local source for goat milk. So you want to have a local source, like you want to actually be able to taste the milk, because depending on what the goats eat, it's either really good or really bad. So if the goats eat weeds, it's going to taste strong. If the goats eat grass and grains, it'll be a lot better tasting goat milk. And actually that's how I started making cheese, was with goat milk, because if you read my book, you know I apprenticed to learn how to make cheese when I was in high school, because one of my little brothers, Ezra, had a lactose intolerance, so he's allergic to milk. And maybe some people don't know, but goat's milk does not have lactose in it. So if you're lactose intolerant, you can actually have goat's milk and therefore goat's cheese. And I didn't want him to miss out on all of the amazing things that you can make with cheese. And so I learned how to make every kind of cheese, from cream cheese to feta cheese to, which is obviously one of my favorites, to pepper jack, to Gouda, to, I mean, those are aged cheeses that take literally months to make. So that's not something for a YouTube video. But yeah, the fresh cheeses, just like lemon cheese, which you can make just with lemon juice. You can even make cheese because it'll curdle the milk, but it's a really soft cheese. I make cottage cheese, mozzarella. So yeah, just try to make sure that he wasn't like missing out on anything. And of course, like cream cheese then made it a possibility for him to have things like cheesecake. So anyway, that's how I started making cheese, and I haven't made it in a while just because it is kind of time consuming. You do have to purchase those cultures, and the calcium chloride if you don't have a farm or direct farm fresh milk, and also the rennet tablets, the either vegetable or animal rennet tablets. So yeah, it's a great process, and if you just want a new experience, then try making cheese
if you also just love super fresh dairy products, then make your own cheese. You can also make your own butter. I might do a video on that, but that's like super easy. All you basically do is whip whipped cream until it's past whipped cream and just keep whipping it and whipping it until it turns into butter. So, but anyway, I mean, add a little salt and stuff like that. But so feta, I'm gonna finish my salad, and I hope that you have a chance to also make some cheese because it's pretty amazing.
So for anyone who hasn't eaten feta or very much of it, some ways you can eat it are naked, which, you know, not like with no clothes on, but just by itself. You can just eat it with a fork. Or you can eat it on salad, obviously, on sandwiches. It's good in omelets, on pasta. Basically, any way that you use other cheeses, you can use feta. So just keep in mind the flavor is going to be a little bit tart, has a little acidity in it. And so whatever you put it on or mix it with is going to give it that little kind of tang element, which is what's so great about it. So I hope you enjoy this video. Let me know if you try your own cheese and how it turns out.